Yeah, it'll come.
Wanted to.
Okay, we have 10 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Was the meeting properly noticed?
Yes, it was.
Roll call.
All members present.
Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Okay. Second by Supervisor Kubarski. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against, nay. Agenda is approved. Approved minutes from July 14th. Okay. Supervisor Scott P. Second by Supervisor Kubarski. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Minutes are approved. Allow public participation as we go through. Correspondence, none. Okay, treasurer's report.
Anybody have any questions on it? That is the June statement, because we are always that month behind giving you the information. So next month you'll have more information on the PMA transfers.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Mr. Rushing.
Jen, as far as the interest rates reflecting what's going on now, I know you had talked with one community bank. Will these change shortly? Do you know?
They are changing monthly. So as one community bank has changed their process for us from just one or two accounts to all our accounts to be the same, which is great. Because you saw some of ours were only 0.15, so now you're seeing the 0.88 on everything. And in the June, and I think it was 1.24 that you're gonna see next month. That they're doing, they're giving us 0.26 more percentage point or the point more than the LGIP, and as long as that goes up, they're gonna keep going up.
Thank you.
And Super Scott Pease.
Don't forget the 2 typos there.
Are they still there? I fixed them once, I don't know what happened now. I guess the word save doesn't come.
Yeah, there's one more step, save.
Okay, seeing nothing else on the report, we'll get the treasurer's budget.
Yep, so this is what the treasurer is proposing for her departmental budget. This whole process is just kind of like an informal process. We're bringing it to the oversight committees for them to review the department's proposed budget. The departments are then going to work with the county manager and myself to then refine their budgets. We may end up changing this process next year, so then the committee is just gonna see the budget after it's been massaged with Cynthia and myself. So there's really no action that needs to be taken for the committee. We're gonna continue to work with each department individually to come up with a final budget.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Repeat.
2 questions. First question is, what numbers are the department heads putting in for CPI number? Or have you decided that? And my second question would be, is her budget reflecting the now the extra 8,000, whatever computer is going up right your program?
That's actually under IT.
That's actually, oh, the one, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a 4% COLA increase for wages and benefits.
And I think that's what we talked about at the committee, right?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so just for clarification, the budget has two parts to it. There's above the line numbers and then there's below the line numbers. The below the line numbers is what you're looking at here, meaning anything but wages and benefits. Wages and benefits are gonna fall on finance and
Okay.
admin. It'll fall on admin. But yes, we are, I do want to kind of remind everyone that one of the assumptions is a 4% COLA. However, Kyle, do you want to maybe touch on, because this does impact all these budgets, above the line, do you want to maybe touch on the merit that may be proposed?
Yeah, so we're looking at potentially doing a merit pay. It would be, so we're doing the 4%. So wages are gonna be adjusted by 4%. We're looking at that in the budget right now. But we're gonna potentially do a merit pay, which would be an additional 4.6% on top of what employees are making this year. So essentially it'd be an 8.6%, but this additional 4.6% would be temporary for 2023. We're looking into potentially doing that. It'd be just to help with employee retention.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So I'll kind of extend on that a little bit more. The merit is a consideration of the current condition with the CPI. When our measurement date that we used, it was what, 8.6 at the time? So that's where we're seeing the 4. That's going to impact their base, but the other 4.6 will not impact their base, which is a sustainability consideration. So anything that impacts an employee's base pay is a sustainability consideration going forward. The merit piece frees up us as far as being obligated in future years, and we're able to use reserves, excess reserves. We have excess reserve in our sales tax, we have excess reserve in our fund balance. And I believe our fund balance is so healthy that we're at 50% when we're only needing to be around 25%. So the message to the community is we need to kind of maybe use that, try to utilize our excess fund balance. And we could do things like move it into capital. There's many things we can do to kind of use the excess reserves. It's just a consideration at this point, but I just wanted you to be aware that this is an assumption we're making. And so moving forward, we're going to be kind of incorporating worst case scenario, which is to have this merit. And by the way, how is the merit paid? It's not going to be a lump sum. Because Kyle mentioned retention. How does this address the retention issue? Because we want to be able to keep people here. We get them here, we want to keep them here. So the retention issue is that the merit will be applied every 30 days. So you have to be here the 30 days to get January's, and then to get February and such, all the way through to the end of the year. We wouldn't want to give them 4.6 at January 1, and then they leave at the end of January. Then that doesn't help our process in trying to retain people. It's an incentive to stay, in essence, but you'll see more on that as we go forward.
Supervisor Baylor.
I have a question about that. I mean, these people are gonna be getting this 4.3 monthly. At the end of the year, they're gonna start to realize, hey, this is a monthly bonus, and they're gonna look for it the following year. You're not gonna get rid of it that easy. I don't care what you think, you're not gonna get rid of it that easy. People are gonna scream.
Supervisor Repeat.
I guess my next question would then be is, if we stay at like 9% CPI right now and we give them a 4.6%, if next year it still goes up another 3%, are we going to continue to 4.6 as a merit pay? Because it didn't, I can see where if it went down, we could move that number down, but if the CPI keeps continuing to go up, I don't know, how do you get rid of that? And if it's based on performance and monthly, I mean, are you going to evaluate people monthly then? Or this is just retention? So that means everybody's going to get it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So there's a lot of considerations right now. I'm just letting you know that this is just something we're looking at. There's a lot of things behind it. And one of the concerns that was brought to my attention, I actually got a phone call saying I need to be careful about expectations of employees going forward. And I said, yes, this is going to be something that we weigh in. It's all about communication and understanding. So I think the employees need to kind of understand the situation going forward next year. By having this split up between a base increase and a merit, that there's the risk of next year. Let's say we just did the 8.5 COLA for base, and then next year it takes a dive. Then we're kind of too far ahead, so the merit kind of combats that a little bit, and next year, if, let's say it goes up 2%, you might see a 4% coming forward again to kind of get that merit situation a little bit more realized into their base. And it gets confusing, but we're gonna have graphs and everything to kind of explain. And again, the most important thing is communication and understanding of the employees, so that when we get to that point, they understand. I'd rather them get this benefit somehow this year, and with the understanding that you may or may not see a merit next year. We're gonna keep working with the base so it lines up with CPI over a history of time.
George Kowarski?
Yeah, why not? I'm gonna suggest you proceed extremely cautiously. I think I mentioned that there could be some unintended consequences here, and anytime that you remove that, you're gonna be into a world of trouble, I'm afraid. Even if you don't give a raise, say when you're talking merit or bonuses and so forth. If in fact the person doesn't get a raise, that's just like going backwards. And this would be very similar to that, I think, how the employee would envision it. So think it through, go very cautiously. I think this could be trouble.
Rich Evans?
I actually think the opposite of how you're thinking here. If you get into merit for 4.6, in the end, then people are going to, after they're not gonna get it, you're gonna lose people instead of the effect that you wanted to do for a year by giving them 4.6 extra. All of a sudden, they're gonna get 4.6 less. I think you're gonna lose more people.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So I just want to address again, yes, it is an absolute concern of ours about expectations of employees when they got merit this year and all of a sudden there's no merit next year. It's about education and understanding. So, and I start with the department heads. And so if they have questions, there's probably things we're not thinking about, like, hey, did you consider this? Thank you, because that's why we have these meetings. There's going to be all these things moving around, but I'm just saying, for now, it's a consideration. And that's where one of the assumptions, as far as our budget above the line is going to consider is the base increase COLA and another 4.6 merit. We're trying to get it to work. It's not that easy. Yes, I agree.
One more comment?
Yes.
I guess this is probably gonna be, I think, if the CPI hadn't went as high as it currently is, we put off doing the salary, I can't think of what's called, the salary.
Wage study.
A wage study, and actually, the wage study being next year, that might really bear out where we really need to be after this big increase. So, I mean, I think it's kind of have better unintended consequences by actually putting it off for a year. Thank you.
Supervisor Freeman?
Didn't we actually vote in a meeting here a month or so ago to start out with wages at the 4.3%?
Mhm.
Now essentially you're bumping that to 8.6%. That isn't what we voted on.
They would have to be approved by them.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing else in the treasurer's report? There is a budget, so since we need no action, we'll move on to the IT report. Rich?
Good morning, everybody. Are there any questions on this month's report?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I talked to Rich about this yesterday, but I want to make a public comment. What they've done with the meetings is wonderful. I've heard from many people that are actually listening to our committees and watching them and learning things. I've heard from at least 4 people now. I told Rich I heard from 3 that they love the way it's been set up, the ease of it. They're excited to see what we're going to do with the this boardroom in and itself. So I want to tell Rich, they've done a really good job making it easy for the public, and it's been very well received from the people I know. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. Supervisor Scott, please.
I concur on that. Today when I came in, who does the, like, the meetings and stuff on the boards? Or maybe it's a Rich question.
That's been me so far. We haven't really gotten to the, who's gonna manage it.
I had somebody down front ask me if this is a closed meeting because it wasn't up on the board. So is that, if it's a closed meeting, that it doesn't get up on the board, or?
No, that should be on the board. Is it possible they didn't see it just rotate through?
I watched it all the way through. I didn't see it. I seen the building one up there, but I didn't see the ad. So then I looked on my phone to make sure I was here for the right day, you know, it might be me, you know.
It was up there because it was pointed out to me by the county clerk's office that for some reason I had 9 o'clock up there instead of 10 o'clock, so I modified it to 10 o'clock start time, so. It was there at one point, maybe I deleted it when I was fixing it to 10 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering. Yeah, otherwise, good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to have no headphones,
Yep.
and hopefully it's coming across. I haven't looked at any of the recordings myself, but hopefully it's coming across and people can understand what we're saying. Okay. Nothing else in the IT report? We'll look at the budget then.
In regards to your question earlier too, Rick, about the land nav GCS upgrade, the ARPA funds were going to be used to pay for the implementation cost, and I believe also the $8,000 increase in annual fees. So we won't see a reflection on that price increase until the 2024 budget.
Thank you.
Well,
Another question for Rich.
Yes.
How's the MOU with the townships going? Have you performed any work for them?
we have done some work for the city of Adams, and the town of Quincy reached out yesterday about helping them set up a .gov email address. We were a little busy with something yesterday, so I wasn't able to get back to her yet, but otherwise, town of Adams, or city of Adams, I'm sorry, is the only one we do some work for currently.
They seem happy with the product or?
Yeah.
Any other questions on budget? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the HR report.
Is there any questions on my report?
Doesn't appear so. Onto your budget then.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
One major change between impacts to resources and county manager budget, we just moved the confidential administrative assistant position 100% to human resources.
Instead of splitting it?
Yeah.
Okay,
It was split 50/50.
that's gonna be a question. Thanks for answering that up front. Supervisor Taylor?
Yes, that was my question, why wages that went up. $34,000 increase in wages, that's obviously the answer. But the other question I had is under a controlled services line, it went from $2,000 last year to $41,000. Can you explain that?
Mr. Chair,
Contracted services. Yeah, I'm sure.
it is the wage study.
So the wage studies under there.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to Corp Council's report. How are things going?
Good, real good. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Supervisor Grayson.
Regarding some of these, can you move it down, Diana? Okay, so we'll go to for some of these lines and so forth. For having too many vehicles or unlicensed vehicles or whatever. And I see that you were, I don't see it right now, but you were going to ask for the maximum.
It's right here.
There it is. Thank you. Some of those vehicles probably aren't worth what the fine is. And so I guess I'm questioning a good idea and as far as having them having the resources to even pay that, I don't know. I mean, I know some of these people, but I don't know what the situation is.
Here's a situation when I put down in situations where we're asking for the maximum forfeiture, it's because these people have been fined the minimums like 3 or 4 times and have done nothing about it. So we just comes, and we do make them aware of it, say, you've got to do something about this because we're not going to continue just giving you $100 fine and then they just pay it and let it go. So at some point in time, we say, well, now we've got to increase it. And so that's where we're at, hoping that they come into compliance with it. Obviously, if they come into compliance before that, we can always modify and negotiate it, but it's just a step increase if they're not going to comply with us.
Thank you, that's fair.
Yes.
My question is on the comment here that if Olson does not clean up by August 31st, the county may do so. Whose budget is that gonna come out of?
That would be, I'll have to double check, but I believe that would come under whoever has clean up. If zoning's doing it, would have to come on. There was, but it gets charged back to the individual on their taxes, on the real estate taxes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be out of razor funds, is that right, John?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have a separate fund set up, no tax levy or raise orders, and they'll get billed back on taxes. That's how it's like 50,000.
Follow-up question here.
Yes.
How long do they have to pay that before their property goes into foreclosure then?
I don't look at properties till at least 3 years delinquent. So if they don't pay, it eventually could come our way.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, we'll go on to the budget.
I have a question again, I'm sorry.
Yes, no, go ahead.
At the bottom, you said you're gonna be in a 12-week course. Does that mean 1 day a week, 4 days a week? I mean, it looks like you could be out of here for quite a
It's an
while.
online course.
It's online, so I do it daily, so many hours a day or.
I'm sorry I had to ask, but it looks like you're gonna be out of the office for quite a while.
That's a course that National Association of Counties has started,
Yes.
and I know I went through the program myself, every 2 years ago now, so. you know, Good professional development course that's done, so. You're matched with a bunch of different,
Yes,
with a cohort, and
yeah, we have our large group that we're in, and then we've boiled down, we've got 9 that we meet at least an hour a week, but then throughout the week, we have different things that we need to do online on our own.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
So, Mr. Chair,
yes,
regarding the budget here, and it has to do with the legal, that's 30 last year, spent 74, 30 again this coming year. Is that gonna cover it?
I believe it will. What I'm looking at as far as the legal expenses are for our ordinances, that's to keep them updated and then do our final year-end report. That's approximately 10,000. I then put 20,000 for outside counsel and I'm anticipating, hopefully we won't need that much. But I think that that should cover it.
I mean, a bunch of the 74 is having Von Briesen, right?
Correct.
Doing a lot of the work earlier in the year, so. We transitioned most of the stuff out of there right now.
Right. They, as far as I know, they only have 2 other cases that they're finalizing.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
One of the big things when we hired Von Briesen and didn't have a council for a couple of years, are we back in line to where we used to be for corp council? We saved a little bit of money by hiring Jeff. Is there any way to monitor that, or could you just tell me that?
What was it budgeted a couple of years ago, I guess, or before?
Give you guys, I did go back on it. I looked at the last time that we were close to the budget was in 2017, where it was budgeted at 198,000 and actual was 201,000. But other than that, we've been way above.
Yeah, okay. I was assuming that. I just wanted to kind of say we did the right thing by hiring Jeff.
I like hearing that.
I was gonna suggest because
We want to keep him.
No merit.
Well, I noticed the sheet's down to about like 1.5 compared to 3 or 4, so.
Okay. Nothing else, we'll move on to county clerk's report.
Any questions?
Diana, I have a question.
Yes.
If we have a big turnout for either the August 9th or the November election, with all these new machines, and are we ever worried about running out of ballots? And if that's the case, how do we proceed if we do run out of a ballot?
Well, we'd always have the availability to vote on the machine,
Okay,
and we try to make sure we have enough ballots no matter what,
okay.
so.
I know it's hard to judge. I mean, I think Kansas the other day, they had like a general election the other day that they never thought it was gonna be like that, so,
Yeah, we're expecting a high turnout, so we're preparing for it.
okay, thank you.
Supervisor Scott.
I noticed you list 2 referendums for Big Flats and Newchester. What would those be?
Newchester is going to appoint their treasurer, and Big Flats is going to appoint their treasurer and clerk.
Thank you.
So for Big Flats, Newchester will have 4 referendums, or 3, and then the whole county will have 2. For Adams Friendship School District, will have 1 there too. And we did order the new machines, so hopefully we'll have them by the November election to help out with the numbers, so.
Okay. Look at the clerk's budget. Budget.
Smaller for a while.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have one question and I'm sure it's, I think I know the answer, but I noticed that the salaries, regular salaries on your department went down. Is that because of the one less position?
Correct.
Do you include any money in there for the floater that you have, that you can hire?
Yeah, we did. We adjusted that. I
That's
worked
the-
with Kyle.
That's in the on-call pay.
Yeah.
And if we see a need for that down the road, I mean, we can go to the county board and increase that if we need to. Any other questions? Now we'll move on to the county board budget. Don't perceive there shouldn't be anything else there, but. One thing at the conference I would learn last week, was it Thursday, Friday, must have been. That, and I would assume we're a county that. Since we have board rules and follow the board rules and. Don't just follow Robert's rules and operate outside the statutes, that we could have elections every year and have. And there are counties that have that, that have half their supervisors 1 year and have staggered terms, you know. Maybe that would be something to look at, so we don't have, you know, then if you have half your people that are up for elections that would be there, don't be a change of 5, it might help for better transitions going forward, but it might be something to consider down the road, so.
I thought that too, but I just can't imagine what a mess it would be to redo the committees every year
Yeah.
and to get. It'd be different if we only had a couple committees, but with that many committees, it would be hard.
Right, I guess
To
it
do
would be.
that.
People just get, takes 6 months to get comfortable in
I-
a committee to know what's going on.
And I'm sure the clerk would like another election.
I was thinking.
That was one of the things that was mentioned. You probably don't want to bring that up.
All the clerks were like, yeah.
It was interesting.
She kicked John on it too.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear that. And
More machines.
there are pluses and minuses both ways. So. Otherwise, moving on then to county manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. So on the first page of the report, I give proper recognition to the sheriff as it relates to the court security deputies, and so special thanks to the sheriff and his department for a job well done. And then to Jane Jervis for the major weather event in June 15th. It's not so much just doing her job, but going above and beyond what is required of her. So special thanks to Jane for a job well done. Dustin Grant for the mapping demonstration from Samuel Bortz. It was received well and some positive comments coming from the board on that presentation. So special thanks to Dustin and Sam for a job well done. And then I also make a notation that I'm sure there's many other department heads doing great things behind the scenes, but it's my effort to try and recognize them as it comes to my attention. The courthouse projects, I have a comment here regarding the doors and where we stand with that. I mentioned the roof situation, and then we get down to the boardroom, the audio visual. The goal is to continue to use Zoom meetings, which will be linked to YouTube upon the start of the Zoom meeting as a live feed in the future. So not only will they be able to go back and access these meetings at their convenience on our website, but also to tune in live, and they'll actually, if they subscribe, they'll get a notice that it's gone live. You'll get a notice on your phone that, hey, going live right now. So anyway, something to look forward to in the future. And also with that, once the system is in place, the need for laptops goes away. So not only your headsets, but your laptops potentially go away. However, it is recommended to bring your laptops if you wish to open documents outside of the meeting. You know, if you want to dive into certain resolutions and such. And I mentioned the crosswalk, and that's just a repeat from last time. Veterans Memorial, the estimate on us taking over that job is about $45,000, and that's gonna be coming from the ARPA funds, or recommended to come from the ARPA funds. Highway M. Okay, I give you an update, I provide all the history here, but the update, according to this report, was that as of the 29th, I hadn't heard anything. And we were expecting to hear something by the end of July. Now we're told that it's gonna extend out until the end of August or early September, so that puts us out another 30 days before we hear anything back. What was that?
1 year.
All right. So with that too, I want to give you a little bit of background, what's happening. We're getting ready to be prepared to move forward with debt in the case that it doesn't go through at this point. So we're kind of working parallel. One, if it goes this way, we're ready. And if it goes the other way, where we have to acquire debt, then we're ready to take off in that direction. So we're just waiting to hear the word.
That must be a misprint in there, summer
What?
2023, right? Not 22.
Where?
County,
Did I do that?
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for bringing that. I thought there was a question.
no. Go ahead.
Do we got to, as a full board, take that out re-vote on that? Didn't we do that once already?
For the bonding,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I just spoke to Kyle about this and I said, are we ready to move forward? And I had him reach out to Ellers to make sure everything's lined up. And you want to maybe just share what you found out?
Yeah, so Ellers checked with Quarles and Brady, bond council, and from my understanding, we should not have to do another resolution. So that the first resolution we did last October, that was the initial resolution authorizing the county to issue $7,165,000 up to that amount, $7,165,000 in debt. We may not issue that full amount. It just kind of depends on funding from the highway department and some other source of funds as well. So if we do not get the DIL funding, then we're gonna look at potentially issuing debt, but we're gonna try to lower how much we actually issue because the interest rates are not too favorable right now. I just got them sent over to us. It's like anywhere from 2% for the principal payment due next year, and then 4.35% up to 2042.
Are we worried about the current bid? Is it enough money to do this project now? With the way the
Material
CPI
costs
went
are.
and with the way oil prices have went, I know they're coming down, but I would be more worried if we could finish it with that amount of money instead of lowering that debt.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So to address that concern about potential increase in the bid, we received certain bids. My understanding is that we're probably going to go out again. Our expectation is it could possibly be higher. I mean, it's common sense that it may be. However, at the same time, we have reserves that are presenting themselves to us, so that the risk is not much. I mean, as far as the debt goes, we still think that the original resolution at the 7.1 million, not to exceed number, is still a good number going forward because we have more liquid funds available to apply towards that project. And then it's not a typo, by the way. It is 2023, so there. On the Highway M. All right, moving on. Happenings. So you may have, hopefully you've read my email I sent out regarding the airport manager contract position. His last day is October 1st. We will soon begin the process of replacing that position. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go back in time, 25 years plus, to see how we originally sought that position. I've gotten 2 recommendations, but to me, the proper, when you have a contract position, is to go out for bids. Even though we have 2 candidates, we'll make sure that they get the notice to do what they can to reply to the bid process, but to me, the right thing to do is to open it up to all. And if we, at the bottom of page 3, I kind of go into the community involvement in other meetings. I do this all the time, and I kind of give a lot of detail about certain meetings I'm having with staff. And if we move on to page 4, in the middle of the page there, looks like, so the opioid settlement, we've been talking about that. Well, our first payment was scheduled to come in, and it's going to be $25,000. So we're still waiting to receive that payment. It's on its way. And then the schedule where it says obligated funds by the county, that pertains to a meeting that I had with the Housing Region Community Development regarding the block grant. And my interest here is to have an open forum of some sort for the community in an effort to make them more aware of this potential out there for assistance. You know, we may have residents here that have family that are in need, or the person themselves are in need. And so to me, I just want to have an open forum to kind of educate. You know, a lot of people don't know we have these programs available to them. Jane Jarvis also does her part in getting this information out as well. But what I found interesting, and I wanted to compare for you, is this obligated funds by the county report. And you can see where Adams County is, so $318,000 of obligated funds, and that is in relation to 16 mortgages. So 16 residents have taken advantage of this program, which I think those are good numbers. So I just wanted to share that information so you can see how we compare to other counties. And if we move on to page 5, in the center of the report there, where it starts out with Wisconsin is tentatively slated for the second cohort, we have this opportunity for grant money coming. However, it is very competitive, and it is very, I mean, the people who are competing for this grant is 70 plus. So this is 70 plus communities competing for this grant. And so I listed here items that we have said were things that were needed in our area. So I met this July 27th deadline that was needed. The next deadline approaching is August 25th. This is where I have to find stakeholder groups and create that. Obviously, I don't want, you know, groups of 5. That the greater the group, the harder it is to really focus on one goal. So I think might limit that to like 3, so we have an odd number. But still working on that, and I do anticipate meeting this deadline. This is me working in conjunction with the Economic Development, Derek Smith. Okay, so the economic development meeting that I did attend. So I highlighted some bullet points here of things that were discussed. The, you know, there's 2 studies that are going on, the feasibility study and also an economic development study. Those are due to be completed by December. Also, there's an interest in reaching out to businesses to potentially have murals painted on their buildings. We have, I think he's looking looking for like 3 or 4 businesses to kind of be in favor of doing this. I thought that was a great idea. I brought up Fairwood, who has this mural on one of the buildings on the square, and it's highlighting people, you know, they have to pay, so there's money involved in it, but you kind of recognize people in our history that have had some significance, you know, some programs that they were behind, but they need to be recognized. And I thought this is a great thing. Also, you can see that they have a vacant position. Looks like they're going to split the cost, you know, between chamber and economic development. And then also there's interest in a business in South Industrial Park. I drove out there yesterday to kind of get an idea what it looked like out there. And I see that we do have like the water available out there. But I think the concern is going to be perhaps connecting to that. So, you know, when we have businesses coming in, the laying utilities out there, which is roughly about $200 per linear foot. Wait, that was last year, so it may have gone up since then, but that's what the last I heard, it was like 200, but that was last year before all the inflation. So the challenge is that these businesses wanting to come in don't want to have to pay for that. So I may be reaching out to the city to see if there's a way that we could potentially use ARPA, which one of the things is being able to do water sewer as ARPA, if we can get some businesses in here. I don't want to lose businesses because, you know, we're not willing to kind of help them out with the laying the utilities.
Are you talking about the one on 82, or are you talking about the one just south of the tracks?
Okay, now you ask me, it's on, it's leaving, it's over the tracks, past the, what I guess it's called the flea market, where all those buildings are, it's that one, it's got a
That one.
sign up that says it's
It's
what
the
it is.
cities, it's a
It's
city.
the city's
Yeah,
one, not
it's
the
the
county,
city.
the county one has one on 82.
No, it's the city, I'm
Okay.
gonna be reaching out to the city to potentially assist.
Okay.
We're all in this together, right?
Yep.
All of
Yep.
us.
Yep.
Quarterly meeting with Jamie, so this is the Rome administrator. I did share two things that we're working on that will impact her, which is the municipal owned vacant land. So it's not just about property. We've already seen reports where we have presented what the county owns as far as vacant land. But what about all municipal vacant land? This is stuff that's very interesting, and again, it's working, collaboratively with other municipalities to give a good picture. She found value in that. And also, we are creating, hoping to create a bike pedestrian map system that will also benefit Rome as well. And then she shared with me the expansion of the Sedge Village Golf Course. So 36 home sites anticipated. Kyle just walked out of the room, and I wanted him to share with you the growth rate. What our current growth rate is, and it's very good news. And we are gonna, during our process, we're gonna kind of educate you guys about how growth rate is determined. And, when you have growth up in Rome or another area may have a negative, I don't know how that's possible, but there's actually a negative growth this year. But we're gonna kind of explain how all of that impacts the county's overall growth. But Kyle, you wanna maybe share that number?
Yep, 2.83% is what our net new construction was. So that's how much we're able to raise the levy by. That's actually third overall in the state, I believe. I looked through. We're behind Kenosha and Calumet counties.
The reason that
What's the dollar amount?
It's gonna be over 400,000.
And the reason I share that with you is that, so I mentioned the 36 home sites anticipated, so we have more growth anticipated in Rome. It's good news. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Supervisor Scott.
You mentioned the airport manager. I think if that's a salary position, and how much do you know offhand?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
That is a contract position. And Kyle, what is that amount?
500 per month. And then there was some reimbursement for incidentals like printing and postage and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go on to the project status report. Anything you want to draw attention to, Kyle?
Yeah, so we were working with PMA on getting that $5 million invested. They were able to secure a net rate of just over 3%. Most of that money. So it's kind of commingled. There's treasury bills that they invested in, and then there's CDs for longer term. But overall, it's about a little over 3% is what we're going to see for the return on what we put in there. They kind of used a ladder approach in how they were investing it. So they invested some that would mature in 6 months and a year and a half. And Positive Pay with the bank, we actually emailed them inquiring about it. And from what I had heard from Janny previously, they didn't actually have it available. She had been asking them about it, but we did receive an email back. They have it available, so we're working with the bank going forward, getting Positive Pay.
Kyle, do you want to explain what pause pay is?
Yep, so we basically just emailed the bank a file of all the checks that we cut, the dollar amount, and the check numbers. So That way the bank can ensure that they're actually able to cash those checks.
It's a coordination of checking the date, check number, who it was made out to, and the amounts, so they would match when they would come through. Because we ran into problems 4 or 5 years ago, we got hacked, somebody stole a check, washed it, and we have checks sometimes that have, multiple things, so they have a void on it. So if that check number didn't clear, they thought it was a new check, and so Positive Pay will stop that from ever happening, hopefully again. Just one of the things.
Kyle, can you tell me what the longest term on that is? You said 6, a year, half,
It's-
a year and a half,
There's a couple of them that are 2 years.
2 years, okay.
It's a good
Mix.
mix of the 6, 9.
Okay.
Year and a half.
Well, I have a question regarding that land acquisition for the airport. Is that from someone that's involved in the airport, or is it a private site? Who they're buying it from? You don't have to name names, I'm just asking, are they involved in the airport themselves?
No, it's south of the airport,
Yeah,
property south of the airport.
So it's not someone involved in the airport?
No, it's the trailer court there.
Oh.
Is what they've been working on. I think that's the same piece of property that this one was there, so. Been going on for 2-3 years, it seems like.
yeah, I went back and looked at property minutes and yeah, it was brought up 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long process.
The Bureau of Aeronautics handles the whole land acquisition. And they're gonna turn around and do this, get this property.
I guess going on that, I've been asked many times, people see this land acquisition, they wonder, what's it for? Is it are we putting in another runway, or I guess what is the real reason to add acreage there?
I think some of it is clearance issues and buildings now in that area. And for that runway going to the south, the clearance and the FAA regulations. Not that they're gonna expand anything, but
Just to answer that, a few years ago, we couldn't bring in a private jet.
Yeah.
We had to go out of Rapids.
Oh, so that's where you fly out?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
yes,
Yeah, I think also it's gonna allow for larger airplanes to come in too. With that whole project. That's just my general understanding, speaking with like Scott about it.
yeah, it's not a lot of property there between the end of the runway and that property there. It's just those buildings are in the, pathway and.
Yeah, it goes down to like County Ave.
Yeah, because I know they used to farm on the far end of that. I don't know if they still do that.
Moving on to the ARPA work group.
If you scroll down there, Lana, you can see that spent a total of $741,000 of ARPA funds. And then another 1.67 million is committed for other projects. And then we're looking at some other projects as well, which is a total of about $126,000. So remaining funds, if all of these projects, the obligated funds and the proposed projects are done, then we would have 1.385 million remaining for ARPA funds. Any questions?
Supervisor Scott Pease.
Kyle, could you explain to me how one goes about making the resolution and they gotta show up to this meeting? And is it's put on the calendar and everything? I've had a few people ask me.
Yep. So we're really kind of focusing mainly on county projects. We're not really looking at outside entities, because if we look, there are outside entities that are requesting some of these ARPA funds, but if we help out with those outside entities that have absolutely no affiliation with the county, then it may just open the door for all these other entities to request money from the county. So we're kind of focusing on the county's needs first. Cynthia, did you have anything to add on that?
Mr. Chair, I would just like to add that our focus then, in summary, is governmental services.
Follow-up question here, thank you. So if, say, somebody from outside the county, an organization wants to come in and make something inside the county, like an addition, would that fly? I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, Central Wisconsin Community Action Council is trying to add on to their food pantry. Would that be the Adams County Food Pantry? Would that be something that would be looked at?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So our intent, because we do have a lot of nonprofits reaching out to us at this point, and what we're doing is we're keeping a list, and my message to them is I'm keeping a list, and if we have excess funds, ARPA funds in 2024, because we have to commit the funds by 2024, end of 2024, if we are struggling to use those funds because we want to utilize them, then at that point, we create a pool. And then we create it for the ones that are asking, which is Historical Society, Lake Districts. A lot of people are asking for our ARPA funds. And so they're just in a list right now. And once that pool is created, if it exists, because there's a lot of governmental services, you know, most likely, I'm just gonna be honest, that most likely it will be used for governmental services. However, if there is a reserve, then it goes into this pool and there'll be some way to allocate it out equitably. You're not gonna go Historical Society, you get all of it and the rest get nothing. So we have to think about what that looks like and it needs to be equitable.
See where it's at.
Okay, my next question, and this was brought to me by somebody else, is we just gave $100,000 to a building that ain't gonna be even be in this county. How does that relate to what you just said?
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Yeah, he really is referring to mid-state
Right.
project. Yeah, so they're planning on expanding the mid-state building that's here. And this is kind of like, we look at a lot of these projects, do they benefit the community? And that type of mindset as well. So like, we're looking at government services, but if we're getting approached, we do look at these projects. So like the mid-state one, that was one that we felt would benefit the community because it's gonna help get our AF high school graduates educated in the community. They'll be able to stay in the community and potentially then go out and work for local businesses within the community.
Okay, Tori, one more follow-up here. So then what I just presented to you is somebody's trying to come in and better the community by adding on to a need in this community. Why is that any different than what you just said about Midstate?
Mr. Chair, so if I understand this right, we have a request of an entity wanting to come into this area and build.
Yeah.
Okay.
or improve the food pantry.
So expand a food pantry. So that's a building where Mid-States is more of a program and, you know, retaining our citizens, providing transportation, I guess, from one campus to another. But and this this mid-states assistance was something that was presented to me on my first day, like, we need to support mid-states, and so that was hanging on my project board for a long time. And then, so this opportunity presented itself, and I thought, okay, here's where I satisfy that kind of direction I was given. I was a board member. So, and I think speaking on behalf of the board, but it's an interest that we had had for a long time to support mid-states however we could. And so it kind of took care of a goal that I was presented, and then also, having the funds here, and it does fit in with the community thing. And not to say that these other things, the historical society, the districts, that certainly is community as well. It gets really tough when you've got a lot of people coming out asking. I feel like I have to kind of put it in a pool at this point. The reason mid-stage was because, again, that was on my radar, right? And so I just sort of applied it to this.
Supervisor Scott.
In closing, I'm all for the money we gave Midstate, don't get me wrong. And I just think that some of this money should be allotted to the food pantry. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, you're not looking at discouraging people because of the historical society applied, so.
No, we actually are gonna have the historical society on your next agenda for Heartland.
But they can contact the work group, and like, Central Wisconsin could contact you and get on the agenda, right?
Right.
And Mr. Chair, so address the food pantry, there are other avenues to go. It's not all about ARPA. There are other granting opportunities, and I mentioned it in my report. The one that we're competing with the 70 communities, that we mentioned the expansion of the food pantry in that.
A rebuttal to that, they already have in line $100,000 grant. We're just supplementing whatever's left of that amount to finish what they need.
Going on to the fiscal report then.
So my memo was attached first. That memo just kind of explains the whole fiscal report. So it's for the second quarter of this year, so it's halfway through the year. So all the revenues should, in theory, be at 50%. So that first tab is the revenues you have up at the top in column F, fiscal year-to-date percentage. So if it is not at 50%, I do have a comment on there. Scrolling down to election fees for county clerk's office, it just put a warning on it that right now there's minimal bill back to municipalities for the first two elections of the year. This year is the first year of the new machines, and municipalities will be charged at year end. It's anticipated that we may not receive the full amount budgeted. And going down further, the interest income for county treasurer, we did put a warning on there that we may not receive that full amount budgeted. However, since we switched over to PMA, we may be able to, if we are able to get more funds over to invest with PMA. General property sale gain, that's due to a change in Wisconsin law. We're no longer able to recognize a gain on the sale of tax deed foreclosures.
Kyle, where's the balance of that money go?
For tax deed foreclosures?
Yep.
That would, I'll let Jamie take care of that.
Right now, John says that, I think the intent when they changed the law, there was some concerns because they didn't recognize some things that once there's a foreclosure, there's no longer any lien holders on there. And for them to give it back to the owner, which I guess was their intent, they didn't realize that, so they wanted now, but they're the way they worded it, they didn't do it right, so. Basically, once all the bills are paid up, what we need or whatever, it's gonna go back to the previous owner.
So we are now in the real estate business.
Yes.
We're selling real
Sort
estate.
of,
for them.
yes,
Wonderful.
but,
For free.
yeah, they're gonna come, if say they're deceased or whatever no longer, then we'll get to keep those funds if they're over and above, but we have to wait 5 years to do that. So we have to try to find people, if we don't find them and we've done our due diligence, after 5 years, then we can keep any excess funds.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
and this is a process that corp councils have been going through. We anticipate some lawsuits on these matters, so the law was poorly written.
but I wouldn't anticipate the counties ever getting that money back. Legislation isn't gonna change. That's what the Wisconsin County Association said, because, you know, legislation wants it to go back to either the lien holders or the property holders. And the county shouldn't be getting that money. If counties need money, they can raise taxes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add that when you see warnings on revenues, what does that mean? It means we relied on that revenue to have a balanced budget. And without that revenue, we have a potential of not having to be in the negative. So we're on the hunt for revenue replacement. And so that's why you're hearing a lot of these ideas coming across your way.
Moving on for maintenance, so renting out the community center the first like 3 months of the year. We weren't doing that. We just started doing it again in April, so we may not hit that dollar amount. It's about $6,000 budgeted revenue though. Further down, there's some miscellaneous grants for the sheriff's department. They typically apply for those grants at year end. I spoke with Chris Jefferson, Sheriff's Department. He indicated that we may not receive that budgeted amount of $7,000.
Does that mean that we won't have the expenditure though?
Well, they try to, a lot of those grants are like for training and that type of stuff. Sometimes they're able to actually get reimbursed for training that they're required to go to. So we may still have those expenditures. It's just kind of like miscellaneous grants as they pop up. If we qualify, they will apply for them. Law enforcement fees, that's based on records requests, and we likely will not meet that. Just it fluctuates based on how many records requests we get. Other jail fees, we likely will not meet that budgeted amount. It's about $12,000 right now. We're at one. $3,300. Sorry, look at the wrong line. Electronic monitoring. That one also fluctuates based on the individuals that are on monitoring. So we may not receive that budgeted amount, but there's also a cost associated with that one. So there's not many people on electronic monitoring on that. Take that out. That's pretty much it for the warnings under revenue, but right now, for the general fund, we're at about 80% for revenue, and a lot of that is because taxes are posted up front, start of the year. On to the expenses tab. All right. So first one right there is under clerk of courts. So this amount fluctuates based on the court activity. So actually, let me back up. The expenses, if they're over 50% year to date in column F there, that's where you're gonna see a comment. And if there's concern, then I'm gonna have a warning on there. It's gonna be in red, letting you know that we may exceed that expenditure, the budgeted expenditure. So yeah, the first one is the indigent counseling. It's just expenses related to court appointed attorneys. So that fluctuates based on court activity. We reduced it by $25,000 and this year's budget used to be $100,000. Over the last 5 years, it was never over $75,000, but this year it's looking like it could potentially exceed the $75,000 amount that we budgeted. Going down, corporation counsel, that one I'm pretty sure everybody's aware of because we had outside counsel for the first part of the year. There's still some matters they're dealing with. That was really it for anything that was over 50% that we should be concerned about that we anticipate over expenses. Any questions on the general fund before I go into solid waste? Last tab is solid waste. So there's some notes down at the bottom on some sort of considerations that we should be given because it does look like they're doing well, but at year end we do have a lot of adjusting entries. There's going to be a $740,000 transfer to debt service, approximately $700,000 of depreciation expenses. We actually transfer money out of the operating fund over into the capital fund to fund the capital, and that's based on the depreciation amount. So typically, your depreciation is a paper expense, but we're trying to fund our capital assets by transferring the cash value of that depreciation over to the capital fund. And there's gonna be about $108,000 in insurance costs. The long-term care and closure cost, they estimated at $200,000, but that's just an estimate. I'm not too certain of that. About $100,000 in pension expenses, but that one is just a paper expense. We're required to recognize our pro rata share of pension expenses.
So Kyle, the long-term care disclosure, the closure cost, that's set by DNR, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so the DNR says how much we're supposed to have in our long-term care. And then there's also some GASB rules related to how we recognize our liability for long-term care and closure costs of the landfill.
Yes.
Does that ever top out? I mean, if we keep doing this year after year after year and that's never spent, I mean, is there a cap on it?
Are you referring to the funds that we're required to have for the DNR?
Yes.
So they tell us they give us an estimate on how much they believe that it's going to cost for us to cap the landfill. And then they estimate when we're gonna actually cap the landfill, and then there's some time value of money calculations that they figure out. And then we have to recognize like our share of that expense based on how full the landfill is.
And then it's setting aside monies for maintenance once it's closed and capped, right?
Right, yep, so then the long-term care costs is like all the maintenance. I think it's 40-year long-term care estimate. So they estimate how much money we need to have the day that landfill closes to care for it long-term. They use a time value money calculation for that as well.
Mr. Chair. So if you consider the 1.4 million activity year to date looks good, but when you consider the additional items below, it takes us into the negative. So it would be a loss versus a revenue over loss situation.
Any other questions?
Where is our report from that? How much longer is that going
Your name, committee chair.
I'm on that committee. As of yet, we haven't seen anything.
And I saw that, I was looking at the project update, the last time I was updated was in June. So. They don't have a deadline for a report out or anything.
Does it look like we're gonna be worse off this year than we were last year?
Potentially. Yeah, we just won the city of Adams bid, so that might help. I mean, that's not that much revenue, but we're bidding these contracts out based on what our cost is, and then we do add a little bit of room to fund our capital as well.
Next, we'll go on to County Dams presentation.
So I'm gonna share my screen layout. Okay, so see my notes here. Okay, so you guys can see that, but you can't see my notes, right?
We can see it all.
Oh.
I can. Can you see his notes?
I can.
All right,
Yeah, no.
Okay, so yeah, we're just going through a history of the Adams County dams, so that.
May I preface before we start?
Yep.
All right, so when I first started here, one of the things that came across right away for me was to kind of look into statutorily or not statutory versus non-statutory things that we're doing here as a county. And so two of the things that came up was solid waste and then dams. Because it's not really typical for counties to own dams, which we'll get into later. So that, from that point, information was starting to come together, and I found it very interesting, the history and how we got here to owning all these dams and sustainability and all that. So I thought if I found it interesting, that perhaps the board would find it interesting, because so many of us have not been here throughout the history of all these dams. So with that, I'll turn over to Kyle.
So, yeah, we've worked quite a bit on this whole presentation, but we've had a lot of help from registered deeds, land and water, library, GIS. Everybody that's kind of helped us with this, treasurer's office, at least helped out, but just getting all the information gathered. A lot of it was looking at old board proceedings, so I had to get help with the county clerk's office as well. All right, so where are all the dams in Adams County? So this is all of the dams, not just the county-owned dams. There's about 67 dams located throughout Adams County. Around 19 dams are part of the Leola drainage ditches. There's dams located in every municipality except for towns of Monroe, Big Flats, and the city of Adams and Wisconsin Dells. So here's a map of all of the locations of county-owned dams. See, there's concentration right up there in Neola, but not all the dams actually create artificial impoundments or man-made lakes. Most of them are up there in Neola, where I pointed out earlier. One thing to note, we were asked when we gave this presentation at Land and Water on Tuesday, how many of these dams actually create artificial impoundments, and in looking through, it was probably around 25 of these dams, not the county-owned ones, so not including the county-owned ones, 25 roughly. 4 of them are state-owned, and they're down in the Quincy Bluffs area. So then we have a map here showing the county-owned dam locations. So you can see there's 4 there up in Rome. So towns of Rome, Preston, Easton, Newchester, Jackson, and Belle Prairie are the ones that have the county-owned dams located in them. So we have a total of 9 dams. One is in the town of Preston, and that created Rocha Cree Lake. So I'm gonna go through these. All of these that have underlines on them are linked. So they link to an image. So here's an image of Rocha Cree Lake, and we're just doing this just for familiarity. So not everybody may be familiar where it is in the county. So this is in the town of Preston, just north of Adams Friendship. There's Highway 13 right here, and Pattonville Dam is over on the west side. And then I'm gonna have a close-up of the dams as well as I go through these, just so you guys can kind of see how much water that kind of hold it back, and just kind of the makeup of the area as well. So you can see that that's where Pattonville Dam is. 4 of them are located in the town of Rome. They create Arrowhead, Sherwood, Upper and Lower Camelot Lakes. Thumbnail in my way here. All right. So here's Arrowhead. Arrowhead is west of Highway 13. So if you go through Rome, Highway 13 goes right between Arrowhead and then Camelot and Sherwood Lake. So Highway 13 is right over here on the east, and Arrowhead Dam is right there on the west side. And here's a close-up of Arrowhead Dam. That crosses right over that dam. Sherwood Lake. And there's Highway 13 right there to the west, and all of this like V shape is Sherwood. And then the dam is right there on the west side. Close up of that dam. See, just flows right under Highway 13, and that flows all the way over to Arrowhead. You have Upper Camelot Lake. So here's the upper portion of the lake, and there's Upper Camelot Dam right there in Kingsway. This is County D. Right here, the black dashes there. And then you have the channel that connects Upper and Lower Camelot Lakes. Here is a close-up of Upper Camelot Dam. Kingsway. And that flows right into Sherwood. Lower Camelot Lake here. See that channel that connects Upper and Lower again. And the dam is located over there on the west side. Here's a close-up of that dam. I think the county forest area is right here to the south of Lower Camelot Dam. One is in the town of Belle Prairie that created Fawn Lake. So here's an image of Fawn Lake. You have Highway 13 right here. This is really in the northern part of Belle Prairie. Close up here of Fawn Lake Dam. It's just a big berm right there, and then water flows through under 13th Ave. One's in the town of Easton, and that creates Easton Lake. When the images were taken in April 2020, Easton Lake was empty. So, but you can see the outline of Easton Lake. There's County A right here, going through Easton, and it's about a mile east of Highway 13.
It still looks like.
Yeah, it still looks like that a little bit. It's starting to fill up.
Yeah, it's starting to fill up now.
Yeah, so the dam's on the west side of Easton Lake, and here's a close up of that dam. It just flows under 11th Drive. One's in the town of Newchester, and that created McGinnis Lake. So here is McGinnis Lake, and the dam is down here up south, this is County G over here east of the lake. Okay. And here's a close up of that dam. It's just a berm as well, and then just a pipe. Then there's one in the town of Jackson that created Peppermill Lake. So this is Peppermill Lake and County G again over here on the east side. You can see that's where the dam is, right there. And we're gonna have a close up of that dam. That's just where the dam is located here. Those are that stream. So all of these listed here, we listed them in date order, so the date that the county actually acquired the dams. So all of those artificial impoundments created by the county owned dams, they actually have lake districts. Alright, so now I'm gonna go into, and again, this is just a history of all the dams. So we want to show what action was taken by the board at the time when these dams were going about getting acquired. So this is resolutions related to all county-owned dams, not just an individual dam or area. So resolution 82 of 1973, that one actually placed an advisory referendum question on the ballot of the next general election. This is the verbiage for the question. Essentially, it was asking citizens of the county, should Adams County own dams that create artificial lakes? So the results of that referendum question were 1,532 no votes to 620 yes votes. So 3/4 of the citizens at the time voted no. So that question was asked in April of '74 on that general election. Resolution 60 of 1992, that was establishing that the county would pay for all county-owned dams, maintenance and repairs through county tax levy and will not impose a special assessment. I'll get into the details of the special assessments later on, but it's kind of saying how we're gonna fund the dams going forward. All right, so Cottonville Dam, which creates Rosha Creek Lake. This one has a long history. Resolution 2 of 1964 was presented to purchase the dam for $1. That resolution was not adopted. 1 year later, same thing was presented to purchase the dam for $1. That resolution was adopted with an amendment to cost share maintenance with Town of Preston. Resolution 85 of 65 was adopted to grant authority to a committee to enter into agreement with the Town of Preston related to the Cottonville Dam. Another resolution was adopted that accepted the agreement between the Town of Preston and the county. The following year, in 1966, there was they adopted a joint session with the Town of Preston and the county board that they cooperate together for maintenance, repair, and method of construction of the dam. Another resolution that year was adopted in joint session, it was adopting a cooperative contract between the town and the county. In 1972, there was a resolution adopted authorizing payment to the Town of Preston for the county's share of maintenance. 1980, there was a resolution adopted authorizing the county to apply for a transfer of ownership to Frank Gribble. The ownership was actually not transferred at that time. But they entered into a 25-year lease with Frank Gribble, so he would lease out the dam and generate hydroelectric power. In 1990, there's a resolution adopted authorizing repairs to the Cottonville Dam. 1991, further repairs to the Cottonville Dam. Later on in 1991, there's a resolution adopted entering into a lease agreement with Charles Pfeiffer for hydroelectric power generation. 1996, there was a resolution adopted entering into a 20-year lease agreement with Charles Pfeiffer. Currently, the dam is leased by Ed Shannick. I couldn't find any like resolutions or county board action related to that current lease. We're moving on to Arrowhead, Sherwood, Upper Camelot, and Lower Camelot Lakes, or dams, sorry. So these lakes are the result of a private developer, and I think everybody here knows that this area is known as the Tri-Lakes area. Resolution 9 of 1967, that was urging the state land commission to sell 640 acres of land in what is now the area around Sherwood and Camelot. That would be section 16, town 20, north range 60. So the state owns 640 acres of land up there at the time, and the county was then urging the state to sell that land. And here is where that whole area is. You can see it encompasses Upper Camelot Dam and then most of Lake Sherwood. Resolution 10 and 11 of 1967, that supported N.E. Isaacson and Associates in obtaining 40 acres where South Camelot Dam is located. I'll just show an image of where that is. This just goes right back to Lower Camelot Dam. So that resolution actually went so far as to potentially condemn the parcel as the owners were unwilling to sell the parcel to N.E. Isaacson. So the county was going to actually condemn that area if they had to. And the county actually facilitated the purchase and construction of Lower Camelot Dam. And upon completion of the dam, the county was to own and maintain the dam. Resolution 41 of 1971 supported N.E. Isaacson's pursuit to build Arrowhead Dam. County would own the dam upon completion, and N.E. Isaacson would convey land to the county and the state for parks. So on the west side of Lake Arrowhead, we have, like right next to the dam is a county park with playground there. And then on the east end, I believe there's some state-owned land and a boat launch. Resolution 64 of 1971 is a record of support for the Arrowhead Dam during the public hearing process. So the DNR had to have a public hearing process, and the county supported that dam being built. This is a continuation still of the history of the Tri-Lakes area. 1972 is a resolution authorizing the transfer of ownership of South Camelot Dam to the county. Resolution 23 of 72 accepting ownership of Sherwood Dam from N.E. Isaacson. Resolution 38 of 72 further support of the Arrowhead Dam and acknowledging transfer of ownership upon completion. Resolution 79 of 72 authorizing Adams County to be a co-applicant for construction of Arrowhead Dam. 75 of 73 accepting ownership of Sherwood and both Camelot Dams. So this is the first area where Upper Camelot Dam was really even mentioned outside of that 640 acre parcel purchase or state land commission selling at 640 acres. So I couldn't really find too much history on Upper Camelot Dam, but at this point it must have been constructed and then they're getting ownership of it. Resolution 101 of 1992 was to fund repairs of Tri-Lakes dams for $458,000. That resolution was defeated. We're going to move on to Fawn Lake. Not too much history on Fawn Lake, but resolution 24 of 71 approving construction of the dam, and resolution 20 of 1974 authorizing the board chair to sign the application to DNR to transfer ownership of the Fawn Lake Dam after certain conditions. Resolution 60 of 1974 is accepting ownership of Fawn Lake Dam, and the previous owner was to pay us $5,000. So we got the dam plus $5,000. Easton Dam, yeah, not too much history on this one. There's resolution 11 of 1994 accepting ownership of the Easton Dam. McGinnis Lake Dam, resolution 32 of 1996 accepting ownership of the McGinnis Lake Dam from Berry. 26 of 97 authorizing legal acceptance and ownership of McGinnis Lake Dam. And moving on to Peppermill Lake Dam. This is the only resolution 25 of 1997 was accepting ownership of Peppermill Lake Dam as the current owners indicated their intent to abandon the dam. Owners of dams are able to abandon the dam and then release all the water that's artificially impounded. So the county is trying to prevent that from happening. nothing, so they took over ownership of the dam. So moving on to how much has been spent on the dams, and we're only looking at a 15-year history, so we're going back 15 years from right now, because our records, our financial software won't really have accurate information going back that far. So from 2007 to 2011, we spent $1.44 million. Some of the major projects: Camelot Dam, subsurface drain installation, gate repairs, and dam stack repairs. Sherwood Dam tow drain project, Cottonville Dam gate seals and repair of concrete wall, and Easton Dam replacement. 2012 to 2016, we spent $523,000. Major project was Cottonville Dam sloping project, Lower Camelot Dam actuator and gate repairs, and Arrowhead Dam bulkhead construction and gate repairs. 2017 to 2021, we spent $436,000, and the major project was Fawn Lake Dam outlet structure repairs, Sherwood Dam repairs. That was it for that 5-year period. So the grand total spend in 15 years was about $2.4 million. From 2007 to 2018, the staffing costs attributed to $153,000 of this. So from 2007 to 2018, we had a half-time employee that they were the dam operator. So it was mainly those wages and benefits plus a little bit of what was allocated for the staff at that time. After 2018, we did not fill that position, and we just absorbed the duties of dam operator through land and water department. So all the staff kind of have an effort in operating the dams and checking maintenance items.
Kyle, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Of the dams that you just went through and the money spent, could you separate out how much was spent on each one at some point? Yes, do that. I mean, that Easton Dam was extremely expensive. It had to be.
Yeah, I could. I'd have to go in a lot more detail into our financial system and look at every little invoice, because what I did is I ran a report that gave me a description, and I just went off of that description. Sometimes those descriptions are very descriptive.
Well, I'm not suggesting you get into particulars, but if you get a general prediction what was spent, I appreciate that, if you can do it.
Yep.
Yes. Kyle, if you went back to slide there where it said staffing, does that staffing number include the amount of, I don't know if we're still doing, because I'm not on land and water anymore, but we pay them a set, I want to say it was $10,000 to maintain the Tri-Lakes Dam themselves. That's still occurring.
That is still occurring, yes. We're gonna touch on that in a little bit. as well.
Okay. Yep. I just wondered if it was in the 153 that you talked about.
No, because we weren't contracted at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think that contract started till 2019. Okay. So where did the funding come from for all of that I just was talking about? So 2007 to 2021, we received $500,000 in grants, and then just under $2 million of that was tax levy. So pretty much most of the dams are funded by tax levy. We do periodically receive grants. So some of the statutes related to municipal owned dams. Wisconsin statute 31.38, that link is applicable. I'm not going to click it though, but I'm going to summarize it here. This statute basically allows municipalities to assess a special assessment, maintenance and repair of their dams. So Wisconsin statute 66.0703 defines how special assessments are charged. However, it only allows for cities, villages, and towns to charge those special assessments. So counties are not allowed to do special assessments.
Question?
Okay.
So does that mean districts can't apply for that special assessment either?
Districts.
I'll get to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cynthia will take care of that one.
I think like you guys.
Yeah. So this is your slide. So
Oh, Okay, so this part of the presentation, this is just consideration, so keep in mind considerations, I'm not making recommendations, I'm just talking about things that are happening internally and how best to proceed if that's even needed. So first bullet point regarding levy. So there, to my knowledge, and looking back at history, there no increase in levy for the assumption of the dams. And if you remember that there was the referendum that went out initially about even owning the dams, and the referendum was no. You know, the community said no. So I assume then the reason there was no referendum going forward to ask for more levy, to go above the levy limit, was that the citizens were going to say no because they said no about owning the dams. So obviously they would say no, or potentially. That's me just making an assumption. So we currently have a levy limit and we're not allowed to create special assessments. As you saw on that previous slide, the only ones that can do special assessments are the municipalities. We're not a municipality, we're the county. We had to make sacrifices. So in order to get this to work initially, because we didn't increase levy dollars, we felt the pressure in our operating budget. We had to make room. We made sacrifices, whether it's equipment, if it's software, if it's personnel, services, whatever it was, to get that to work. Then how normal is it to have counties owning dams in the first place versus municipalities owning them? Kyle, do you want to maybe share what you found?
Yeah, we reached out to someone at the DNR and he said that there are about 20 counties that own dams, 20 of 72 counties own dams. Example right off the top of my head is like Wood County. Because I live there, I know that they own dams, but the way that they own dams is a lot different than how we own dams. So they own at least 4. There's 2 at Northwood County Park, 1 at Dexter, and then 1 at Southwood County Park or Lake Wazeecha. They own all of the land around the dams as well, and it's county forest and camping. Lake Wazeecha is the only exception. They don't own all of it around there. Some of it goes into Portage County, and then I think there's like 4 or 5 private residences in Wood County, but there's walking paths all the way around it. So their manner in which they own dams is substantially different from Adams County.
So moving into the annual budget. We budget $133,000, and that's just for the capital. So we're looking for capital expenditures. Our actual expenses, such as the contract up in Tri-Lakes, insurance costs, that's absorbed in land and water. So just considering the 133, which is the annual budget every year for just going into capital. So if there's a year of no capital expenditures, then that dollar amount collapses down into a reserve for the dams, because we have to have some sort of reserve for catastrophe. And so that's what's been happening over the years. And Kyle, do you maybe want to share where we stand as far as the, well, I guess we'll get to that in a minute, sorry. As far as where we are with the reserves. And next is liability risk. You can go ahead, okay. So these risks are putting these classes, so we have low to high. And you can see that most of our dams are in the high category. So what does that really mean? If it's low, it just means that there's the structure itself, or there are no residents below that would be impacted by a flood. That would put it into the low. And of course, high would mean that there's a potential high risk of, the cost of the structure plus the damage downstream. Who puts it in those classes? DNR. DNR puts it in those classes for us. And you can see from this, where we are, that most of our dams are high risk, just bear that in mind. Okay, now we're going to talk about fund balance. So if you recall, all of you served on the board when this happened, we did a one-time sales tax infusion to kind of build up that reserve, because I was kind of concerned there wasn't a lot of money in this reserve account. So we did a one-time $1 million infusion, and that came from sales tax excess. We had excess sales tax we could apply. And so the question is that enough? Is it sufficient? And it really is a hard question to answer. This is something I'm doing. I'm not looking for guidance today, but I'm just trying to weigh, how do we go about determining what this is? So I turn to insurance on the dams. We have a deductible that ranges from 2,500 to 5,000. And then there is a cap of 1 million. And then we also look at what's the value of the dams. And right now, we're assuming that they're $1 million a piece, except for Fawn Lake, which is at 500,000. So again, is it underfunded or is it properly funded? That's my. And next we have Lake District. So as Kyle mentioned, we have 9 dams, each of them have a lake district. There's a lake district that's reaching out to me for capital assistance. So we have operating, then we have capital. And on the capital side, they're seeking $600,000 of ARPA funds. That was a request coming. And so an argument that could be for the district is that their district residents pay county levy, which also pays for the 9 dams. And then again, their district residents are also paying for their dam, which is not owned by the county. So it's the lake and the dam. So that's their, I guess that's their argument, is that somehow they're paying twice like the county. But my message is that we never increased our levy for the assumption of all of those dams. So I suppose the levy would have been paid by those residents, whether or not we had the dams. So Lake District, so we talked about special assessments. Special assessments, as it relates to lake districts, they can do a special assessment. They can also do a levy. They can also, there's an outreach where they can go out and ask for donations to support the expenses. So if they choose, like this particular lake district originally was an assessment, a special assessment, and this, I think the latest year here, they chose levy. The problem when you choose levy is that they're going to experience what we experience in other municipalities. When it's a levy, there's a levy limit. So if you have expenses that are above this levy limit, you have to absorb it somewhere else. You can't get it from levy. And perhaps that's what they're experiencing, because this was a change over prior year. Again, special assessment, and they moved over to levy. And so my question, when we go into the next category here, municipal support. Whoops, municipal support. So we may need to consider, as far as going into the future, what are some considerations? Why is the burden of the dams all on the county? We both have citizens, so we have county citizens, and then we also have municipal citizens that benefit from having these dams, whether it be development, recreation, or such. And so again, I say, why is the burden all on the county? And perhaps the mindset is, and it would make sense, that some would say that we have the deep pockets. I mean, I've heard the word deep pockets, and that's true, but we also have, we are struggling with our operation budget as well. And is there I'm just going to read out what I've got here. So do we have the municipals take ownership of the dams? And why that would be a consideration is that as a county, we could still support them in some way dollar-wise, but they, because they're a municipality, can have a special assessment. So they have their levy, but they can also have a special assessment. We cannot do that. We are limited to levy. That's it. As a county, we cannot have a special assessment. So again, we took a hit on our operating, and we never really, to me, got recovered from that. Do we keep the dams and then seek assistance again from the municipality? So let's say we keep the dams, but then we seek those particular municipalities that have the dams to give us some financial support, for having the dams. Or do we do nothing and just keep it status quo? Status quo maybe too comfortable? Or do we continue to find ways to save money to address the sustainability concern? And with that, I guess that concludes mine. And Kyle, and do you have any questions?
Yeah, so there was a couple other questions at the last meeting that I didn't touch on. Couldn't really fit it anywhere. So who covers the private structures in the event of an incident downstream from the dams? That was asked at Land and Water. Essentially, it comes down to their private insurance would cover it. Our insurance would cover our loss, and then their insurance would cover their loss. And also, there's a question regarding Tri-Lakes insurance coverage. So in the agreement with Tri-Lakes, they're required to hold a workers' comp policy and a $1 million general liability policy. So Tri-Lakes has insurance for operating dams. I think that's about it for some of the questions. Any others?
Kyle, did we cover the fund balance?
The fund balance, so fund balance, so Land and Water has a capital fund. They have 3 items in that capital fund. That is their vehicles. They have a GPS surveyor, and then they have the dams. GPS surveyor is about 15,000 vehicles. We have at about 144,000. So that's how much we need to have for fund balance for those ones. And then you have the dams. The dams, we have those valued as an estimation, about $2 million, but then we say that half of it, the cost to rebuild them would be split with grants. And then they have a 75-year useful life. So that really comes down to about $133,500 per year. Anyway, we saw the Land and Water presentation. We talked about how about $2 million over 15 years was how much was spent, and that equates to about $133,000. It's just coincidental, essentially, that the amount we're budgeting for capital for the dams for replacement and what was spent over 15 years is insane. It's just coincidental.
So what's sitting in the fund reserve for dams will, by year end, will be roughly $2 million.
I have a question. You mentioned that municipalities could do special assessments where the county can only be levied. But lake districts also can do special assessments. So why would the municipalities want to step in and own these dams? Because of the risk, if no other reason. When the Lake District can already do whatever they want, and they've done that in some cases. Thank you.
I do not speak on behalf of municipalities, but I mean, if I put myself in their shoes, I would be, I would hope that, I mean, my understanding would, I'd be looking at the county having, again, deeper pockets. You know, the assumption is that we have all this money and then, of course, the ARPA funds and, I'm gonna have to, obviously, we're just not gonna force something. We're gonna have discussions. This is not something done behind doors. That's why I'm discussing all this stuff open and being, you know, open and transparent so that they can see that we have concerns. Not that we're gonna do anything, but these are just concerns. I mean, not even concerns, considerations, because we can afford it right now. Okay, it's been this way for a long time. It's just, these are just considerations as I look for revenue. You know, we're losing revenues every year. It seems like some new program makes us lose revenue that we can't even recognize anymore. So we have to find replacements. So it's either new revenue or it's cost savings. So these are just things I'm looking at. I'm just sharing and being open with you.
You gave what the price is for each of these dams, $1 million and $500,000. What would be the replacement cost of that? Did anybody ever look into how much Lake Dalton had to pay when their dam went out?
So originally when I spoke to Kyle about this, a $2 million number came up, 2 million. But as it relates to our insurance coverage, it was recommended that it be $1 million. Now, Kyle, did you want to add something to that? Okay. So perhaps 2 million is replacement and there's a gap.
Yeah, so, I think, no, that's something else. So back when we initially went and did the capital budgets, the land and water department had at the time wasn't really entirely sure where the value should be on the dams. We kind of estimated, okay, maybe it'll be $2 million, you know, for replacing the dams. But then he said, well, about half of it would be grant funded. And then further questioning, we're like, well, then what's the useful life of the dams? Well, about 75 years. So we came up with, all right, each of these dams would be roughly $2 million. And that may be an overestimation, considering that Fawn Lake, I think, was recently rebuilt for like $500,000. So, yeah, we put them all at 2 million, said half of them are gonna be funded by grants, so that's $9 million roughly is what we need to rebuild all of the dams all at once. And then divide that by 75 years. That's about $133,500.
Kyle, I would recommend you talk to the village board over in Necedah. They replaced that dam. It took them several years to come up with the funding to do that. They were without a lake for quite some time on Yellow River. But you might want to check that out. They could probably give you a more accurate answer what it would actually cost.
And all of, the problem is like a lot of the dams are different, like Peppermill and McGinnis, they're basically just a big berm with a straight pipe going through them, and then you have Sherwood Lake Dam is massive levee, and then you have, I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's basically a big hole, I think, right? And then the water flows over that hole and down the pipe. And there's something that controls the flow of the
There's
water.
a gate that controls that.
Yeah,
That's why we replaced that about 4 years ago.
right. Yeah, it's like a Mayflower dam. or something.
Right.
Peppermill down there, that was a beaver dam, just so you know. When I grew up with beaver dam.
Beavers need it.
My concern is this too, that could possibly one of those in the tri-lakes go and then take the other two out.
Upper and lower Camelot.
Yes, aren't they all kind of intertwined there? If one of them failed, it could possibly take the other two.
Well, actually, that happened with the Cottonville Dam that took out the Arkdale Dam back in the 60s. And the fact is, right now, we're doing a special assessment for dredging because Cottonville Dam let a bunch of water out back in '04 or something, I don't know what year. But at any rate, they asked the county to pay for it, and the county said, no. So, anyway, so there, yeah, one affects the other, there's no question about it.
So, Mr. Chair, thanks for sharing that information. It's what's good about having these open dialogues and discussions, because a consideration now when figuring out what is a proper reserve to have for the dams is the consideration that if this one fails, then that. So thank you for that.
Okay. Moving on to the 2023 budget. Is Kyle or?
It's county manager's budget.
Oh, county manager's budget? Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, you'll see that wages are going down, and that's related to what we talked about earlier with HR. Contracted services, we reduced that to kind of help out with HR covering for the wage and benefit analysis. Otherwise, it wasn't too much. We kind of looked at like last 5-year history and what we actually spent for each line.
Questions? Okay, then we'll go on to budget amendments. Resolution for planning and zoning budget amendment.
So this is the resolution. Below the resolution, I have a memo typed up kind of explaining budget amendments. We haven't really historically done budget amendments in the past. So this is going to be kind of a new process ongoing. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read the memo before the meeting. Basically,
Well, I'll just interject something very quickly about budget amendments. So when you see budget amendments on here, they're gonna be one of two things: supplemental budget, which means we have a new source of revenues coming in, and then associated expenses related to that. What are new revenues? Could be grant money coming in. It could be us having to fix something at a dam, and us having to use fund balance, you know, the reserve that we talk about, because that was not typically budgeted to use funds, which is called the planned spend down. So we may have a situation like that. So special or for supplemental budget, it means new money, okay? If it's what's the other category? I don't think we have that here. This is actually, all these budget amendments before you today are all supplemental. The other ones are just considered transfers between one department to another. So it was in the budget somehow, it just transfers between two departments. But with that, go ahead, Kyle, sorry.
So yeah, this first one is just a budget amendment for planning and zoning. You guys recall, we did that Quincy zoning contract. So that contract was about $28,500 for this year's, but it's gonna be, because I think we weren't doing it in the first quarter. So we have $28,500 in new revenue and associated expenses for the part-time staff that we are looking to hire. So that's where part of this budget amendment is. And then the other part is $30,000 in new revenue for building permits and fees. And then we're increasing contracted services and planning and zoning by another $30,000. And the reason for that increase in contracted services, we've noticed that there was payments to general engineering that was coming out of revenue line for whatever reason. So we applied those to the correct line rather than decreasing the revenue to make those payments. We should be paying them out of the expense category. So that's the reason for these two budget amendments. For planning and zoning budget amendments.
What happens if the budget amendment fails? And it's just a question. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I'm just saying, does it have an impact on anything?
I think this is more formality. I don't know if Cynthia, you were.
Okay, so the impact of not having an approved budget amendment is that this would end up in the footnote disclosure of our financial statements that a particular fund went over budget. So we're just trying to keep that from happening.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
isn't the Quincy zoning, I might be confusing this with Sheriff's Department, and I bet I am. It's two separate deals.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, guys.
I mean, this was a resolution that came forward in April or May right away. Discussion on the board for it, and I realize that, and it corrects the budget, and that's what it is, and that's what it's not like it's an expenditure where it's an expenditure over and above the 10% that this committee could approve coming out of the contingency fund, so then we'd have to go to the board, and it really has a detriment on the finances of the county as a whole, and that's why you need the, approval, so.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion approved and sent out of county board. Any further discussion?
Seeing as how we are okay financially, why is it we have to raise building permits and fees another 30,000?
I mean, those are the fees that we're gonna be charging Quincy, right?
No, the building
No,
permit
This is something different.
Yeah, the building permits and fees is something different. There was a classification error in expenses. So in looking at planning and zoning's budget for contracted services, and they contract with general engineering for doing some sort of inspections. They were gonna be over at their contracted services line, and discovered that because they were classifying expenses into revenue.
Oh, so it's a correction, budget correction, really. You get that?
I got it.
General Engineering was the company I think that Quincy was going through. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, but we use them for some things. I'm not, I think they're commercial stuff that we use them for. I don't. Yeah.
Trustee.
Dusty would know for sure. I think it's related to commercial building.
See no further questions, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
I,
Those opposed, signify by saying nay. Nay. Noted. Resolution will go forward, county board. Next item is debt service budget amendment.
Yeah, so this is another supplemental budget amendment. This is just related to the resolution that authorized early payoff of our debt. So this is applying the fund balance of $2,723,239 to pay principal and interest. So the fund balance is going to be applied for the associated expenses.
Is that a motion to approve supervisor fees?
no,
Okay,
how come we're getting all of a sudden, is this, what would happen if we didn't have this? I mean, it would still go through, right? I mean, is this
it's just
just,
different in the budget then.
I mean, you guys adjust the budget all the time.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So what happens if we don't do a budget amendment? These expenditures that are in all of these budget amendments are going to happen, okay? What this does is it cleans up the reporting where it adjusts the budget to support something that was already approved. And this is what the auditors are gonna look at when they come out here. They're gonna say, hey, how did this fund compare to what you budgeted to happen? And if it exceeds budget, that's kind of like a red flag for them and ends up in our footnote disclosure. Something that those who rely on our financial statements to make judgments about the county and such will look at that and think that perhaps, I'm just gonna put it out there, that money, something's not being managed right. It's kind of a red flag that ends up in the footnote disclosure that way. This just cleans up the books to adjust a budget to align with something that was already approved to be expensed out of that item. Is there something more you want to add, Kyle?
I think you just answered my question. This has been approved by the county board as a whole.
We've already paid it.
Right, well, okay then. So I'll move approval.
I'll second, but I have.
Okay, question.
My question is how come this resolution doesn't just come with the other resolution also from now on? And that would clear this whole thing up.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
That's what's gonna happen going forward. This whole process is new. We are reviewing our fiscal policy. And yes, all this stuff will line up properly. So you'll see, here's the request to pay it off. Here's the resolution making the budget amendment to make it happen.
Perfect.
All is well.
Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
I,
Those opposed, signify by saying nay. Resolution, then we'll move on to county board. Next, we have discuss and direct on board rules and land acquisition process. got the lead on that. Jeff, it looks like.
Okay, well, the issue came up, our board rules really doesn't say which committee is in charge of land acquisitions and such. So I did look it over, and this is what I would make as a recommendation regarding the property committee. I would suggest that we add a section 6 to the property committee's duties.
Could you just bring that down? Could you show us?
And I would suggest that it reads something along the line of this committee, along with the county manager / administrative coordinator, shall oversee all property owned by the county and shall recommend any action to acquire or dispose of county real estate or other county property. I came up with that language. I contacted other corp councils to see what they had as far as property acquisition and disposal. And this is basically what other counties are using. So I think that would be good under the property committee. But also did take into consideration the building committee because of the building committee's duties. And I know that sometimes this can run into a conflict here. So I thought under the building committee, we could enter a sub 1, which would state, notwithstanding the duties and responsibilities of the property and recreation committee, this committee, along with the county manager / administrative coordinator, shall recommend any action to acquire real estate which is necessary for the new construction or renovation projects. To me, it just even makes sense if you've got the building committee that's in charge of new buildings, if it's needed to have land acquisition, that it should also handle the land acquisition rather than go to a second committee. So that just carves out this one exception for the building committee. And again, consulted with other corp counsel to see how they handled it. Again, not very well, none that I came across had this carve out section, but I think it makes sense the way that our board rules apply.
Question, Jeff.
Yes.
These other corp councils that you contacted, do they have a building committee?
Some did, some didn't.
To go along with that statement, there has been a movement before it to do away with the building committee a couple times. Do we always foresee us having a building committee, I guess, is the question? I know we need one for the next couple of years.
I know it was a committee that was an ad hoc committee at one time. And then, to have an ad hoc committee, is a committee that gets created every time. So we knew that we would have it over a period of time. So once any building, if these phases end up not going forward and stuff like that, at that time, I think then the building committee would just go away. And then if there's a need again, it would be added to the board rules, or, if it's just a short-term thing that would be there, that the property committee, or it would be somebody else that you want, then you'd create an ad hoc committee if it's just a short-term thing. But we had it on there, and then it was always called the ad hoc building committee, but. So. They should read it.
As you explained that, Jeff, let me try to understand this a little better. Property would be in charge of acquiring land or acquisition if there was no building involved. And building committee if there was going to be a new building involved, correct?
Yeah, basically, if building is involved, in order to do a new building, you needed to acquire the land, just leave it with the building committee. It makes sense leaving one. Other than that, property would handle
Okay.
it.
So let's go back to the original reason this question was brought up was the land at the fairgrounds. So there is not to be a building built on that unless, it's a maybe. So who would be in charge of that one?
Okay, well, right now, I think we've already resolved that through the building committee. Okay, but going forward, property, if we go this route.
Right, that clarifies this question that we had, and that's why we had that joint meeting, right? So, who's really didn't say in the board rules, who oversees that, so.
And it still would be a question.
So in other words, we could, the building committee could have 10 different properties and, the property committee could shoot it down and then we're stuck.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
so if it's part of a project so if it's one of our phases, then no, it wouldn't go to property, it's still gonna stay in building. So as far as being able to have impact on a project, not so much. It's only land that we're trying to acquire that's not part of any building project.
I feel like when it was, you know, when they're working with the city, buying that village, it's actually it was part of that expansion project right now. So that would have been a building committee, but these other ones, especially the one on this side, on the east side of the fairgrounds, there's no plan project there right now, if we were getting that sort of. Oh, sorry. Okay,
So the way these boards are right now, that ain't in here. The way she's showing them right here.
Yeah, the way that we currently, the way that we currently have it, it doesn't really describe who handles what.
I'm just looking at it here, what you just said, I didn't see it in the verbiage, I guess, what you're proposing.
well, he has, you don't have verbiage as a note, right?
No, I didn't put it in a note, I just
Okay.
read it to you.
All right.
But we would have that if there's a big.
I'll make a motion, so the way Jeff read it.
Motion to propose change the board rules and go forward to county board.
Correct.
Second. Yep. President Worthing. Any further discussion?
Just a quick question, is that gonna, we have to change the board rules then?
Right, it was by a 2/3 vote,
Yeah,
right?
okay, got it.
Any other questions?
No, I believe it just goes, yeah, this time we just goes to the board.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay.
Me.
Okay. Noted. That motion is approved and that will go on to county board, so. Next item. Resolution for aging disability ADRC vehicle. I don't pass that.
Yep, so this is, resolution used the 20% match. We would use the ARPA funds for the 20% match for the purchase of a transportation vehicle for the ADRC. The county match would be not to exceed $12,000. And the fiscal note does kind of explain the grant funds on there. Questions at all? This was, this went through the ARPA work group and I believe it was approved.
This is gonna replace that rusty vehicle I saw here the other day.
I'm not sure. It's gonna replace that one. Or the one outside,
Yeah,
that's solid waste.
okay. Okay,
They use it to transport Goober.
okay, okay. This was not in the budget before.
So they get a grant. Just read this fiscal note really quick here. Yeah, I think they're gonna place the order towards the end of the year with the state, but they have a grant that will cover like transportation and mileage. The mileage that we pay to the volunteer drivers. And they can take that and apply it to the purchase of this vehicle, but then they wouldn't have that grant that to cover for the mileage of the drivers.
Supervisor Shepherd.
I would like to see this table till we know exactly how much they're gonna receive.
Wendy is on to answer some more detailed questions.
Did you want me to have some input here?
Please.
We are writing for the grant right now. The grant is due by the end of August. But the Department of Transportation takes a very long time to process this grant. And the quoted price for it is, I think it's $56,000 that the state would pay for this. And then our match would be just less than $12,000. Those rates could change by the time the grant gets processed through because of how vehicles are changing in prices all the time. We are always only responsible for the 20%.
Mr. Chair, so I'd like to put that question back out there. The question was this originally budgeted?
In the past, as Kyle had said, we had used the last couple of years with COVID out there, we hadn't had as many volunteer drivers. So the last vehicles and the last time we had this grant, we used a different vehicle grant that we got to meet the 20% match. We are going to need that other grant to pay our volunteers moving forward here as things have opened up. I do believe that Donna intends to retire one of the other vehicles that is in disrepair and no longer passes all the requirements.
Supervisor repeat.
Does this meet your ARPA threshold for this is deals with services? Is that what I'm considering for ARPA?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So it's the governmental services, indeed.
We have a motion on the floor.
No, we don't.
I would make that motion to follow through this resolution.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Further questions? I mean, if we don't get the grant, I mean, then it just,
So we have the not to exceed $12,000 on there.
yes.
So if we don't get the grant, we're not getting the vehicle essentially, because we're not gonna, the vehicle's gonna be more than $12,000. So they're not gonna get the vehicle if they don't get the grant.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Voted. So the resolution, motion to send the resolution on the county board is approved. Next item is Veterans Memorial Wall. Okay.
Yeah, this is just to shore up along the other side where they took the steps out, and just to kind of help out with the veterans group that's wanting to put up the memorial up there. So it's Dixon County building out there, but
Sorry, did I skip one? No, C, we're on C. Dropbox is the next one.
All right.
Order that sandwich.
So,
All right.
Mr. Chair.
yes, it's a resolution.
I talked to Bill, I don't know, a day or so ago regarding this, and they said, how did they come up with $44,000 on pouring a stub wall? Well, he went through it with me. One of the real sticklers was 12 $12,000 cap that goes on top of the wall in order to protect, current wall that's there. This is, I mean, for me, this is way too high, but quite honestly, I don't think we have a hell of a lot of choice. That wall needs to get sealed up. It's been open now for over a year. And I know the committee talked about early on that we were uncomfortable with that. And it's like, no, everything will be fine. Well, when we found this opportunity, and again, coming back to ARPA funds, that we would use this and get that sealed up. So that's a little bit of the history.
George, Rick,
When I hear this story about this, and after what, especially after what Bob said, how come this is really this need to be done without it being a veteran if we're gonna remove those things? So, I mean, we talked about not necessarily letting other outside organizations right now look for ARPA, but really this shouldn't even have a veteran in here because we need to do something with the wall anyways, correct?
Yes.
And if that's the case, how come there wasn't money left in the building to finish this up in lieu of using ARPA funds for it? I guess that's where I'm at with that.
George, Kathy.
It was never originally in the building project. That had nothing to do with the building project. We decided as a committee that we would donate the $20,000 to remove the steps, and they were gonna take care of everything else, the Veterans Committee.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but now, that was part of our contingency fund. It came, and that's why we're a little bit over on the building. I'm all for the Veterans Memorial and whatnot, but we did the original 20,000, now they're coming for 43,000. And I haven't seen a dime of the Veterans Memorial yet that they've paid for it.
I think Scott brings up a legitimate question. Having said that, we still need to cover that wall. And I think that's extremely important, that we don't compromise our courthouse that's already here. So I guess I'm gonna move approval of this resolution onto the county board.
Motion to move the resolution on the county board,
I'll second.
second by Supervisor Rick Keys. Further discussion or questions?
Again, I would say that we almost should rename this to putting the wall back to where it's supposed to be and not necessarily leave the veterans in there, but I will still approve it because I'm like Bob, that wall needs to get done. Something needs to happen with that wall.
I concur, it probably should just be to build the wall back, not necessarily for the veterans' use.
It's not actually part of the memorial, right?
Right.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so it actually states that cap for the tribute to Adams County veterans, not so much the veterans group, but the tribute to the veterans. Well, that makes a difference.
How do you think most people are gonna read that?
Like it's going on, the veteran wall, but it's not.
No,
So,
We can make a motion and
no, we can leave it like that. I'm fine with it. I just,
should be explained at county board.
it should be explained differently.
So when it comes up on county board floor, Supervisor Barnes.
I'm gonna be absent that night.
Well, the chairman's already going to be gone, so. So, okay, we got a motion and a second to move that on the county board. See no further discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
I,
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Resolution will- Motion to move the resolution on the county board is approved. Then we have the Dropbox. So. And we discussed this a long time ago. Or does Kyle want to cover this, or does the treasurer want to cover this? And she stayed for the meeting and I assumed it.
As usual, I asked for it. And you know, anybody that's been, I have kind of hinted at that in the past, that a Dropbox has been asked about, especially when we have so many weekenders, and when it comes to my tax part, they always ask if we have a Dropbox here, and we've never been able to go forward with it. And there's a handful of townships that do have it, and then they end up getting them trucked, and so there's issues. But this isn't just from myself, I did ask around, child support would love one. Planning and zoning said they could utilize it, even Dr. Diana County Clerk, she said she probably didn't, but I kind of said, if somebody can't make it here by 4:30, they could still put something in there and get here in time without somebody having to come back again during office hours. And now with the new entrance, it's been asked about, well, people have complained about the walk that they may have to do, that the Dropbox is they're hoping that this will go forward. So. I keep that at the haunt. But especially now with the new front entrance, and Bill says it would be inside. We would have it marked specifically for certain offices. Hopefully, people will do that. The sheriff's department will maintain theirs, and we'll do this one, so we don't get people dropping off stuff we don't want. And it'll be monitored with the cameras.
Not to exceed $2,000.
I didn't know.
Super expensive.
So if it's tax day, say, and you pick it up the next morning, they could actually drop mail in there at 7:00 AM and it'd still be marked for the previous day?
You mean when it's due?
Yeah. when it's due.
Actually, in that case, the reading is it has to be received by 4:30 at the end of the business day. So I would clear that out at that point. So anything after that would definitely not. No, I can monitor that.
It's your right opinion.
Is that entrance open 24/7?
The first area there,
The first area is you have to push the button.
before you go into security.
To go to security, but it goes to the jail.
Okay, if we were so concerned about security here that we put all the metal detectors and everything else in, we put a Dropbox there, wouldn't that be a real nice place to just slip a bomb in?
So cameras are on? I don't know.
Camera won't stop.
They can do it in the front entrance too. I mean, outside the front entrance, I mean.
Yes.
I think there's already a Dropbox out there too, even for drug chase night, right?
Oh, yes,
Two.
there is right now, yeah.
Sheriff's department stuff.
Get your tax bill in one walk.
That's why we have, that's why I got it.
It is a different color.
Yeah, they will be, it'll be marked. Most of those drop boxes that you can have details that specify what departments they're in. Because we wouldn't need sheriff stuff. It's just a fact that especially a lot of people come up on weekends and mail has not,
Not as quick as it should
it's
be.
not like,
No,
it's
it's not
not
as
like
quick
it
as it
used
used
to
to
be, and they don't trust it. They prefer one-on-one, but yet they can't make our hours that we are here. So a Dropbox, especially for weekenders, they would, if they're up here enjoying what they do, they can come here and then put it in knowing that it's there. And that's just my portion, but on a daily basis, I mean, you know, I don't always have it all the time. Planning and zoning, some of their contractors and stuff, they can, now that we have online payments, they can make all their payments ahead, but getting here to the office with their paperwork during the time frame that they're here has been an issue sometimes. So if they can come after hours and get their stuff and put it in that box, planning and zoning can get it and start working on it. And different things like that.
My only problem with this is I like the idea. I think it's a convenience for lots of people. I just don't know where it fits under ARPA. I understand it's a service thing, but for $2,000, I can't believe that somebody, those departments that are actually gonna use it couldn't spare $500 out of their own cost centers to purchase the box. If we have to, if we're that destitute to buy it out of this, I guess that's what we'll do, but I just don't see the reason when I think that it could come out of the normal budget. If that's the case, I'll make a motion to approve. One day I'd like to get back to work.
If you're waiting for a second, I'll second.
Okay, motion and second, so. Further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. No. I was nay. Okay. Oh, let's see. I think that's about it, right? Upcoming agenda items, next meeting date. I think September is gonna be an easier month. For scheduling, right?
Oh.
I don't have many days out of the. Right now.
What do we look at, the second?
Oh, no, that day I'm out of town. The ninth, we don't have the county boards not till the 20th that month. The ninth,
Why didn't we just do the game presentation?
September 9th,
Ninth is okay with you. Ninth okay with you?
Yeah.
does that work for staff?
I just want to remind on the budget schedule, there's another one in September as well, September 30th for admin and finance.
Okay.
The regular one, budget one.
Are you doing a damn presentation at the regular board meeting? The only reason we asked is because then we would have thought that it probably been better if it would have went there instead of
It's
here.
recorded now.
Right, so I would say, no, you won't have to do it then.
Providers want to watch it, they can watch it.
Because. The
There's been two of them
property,
now.
land and water has seen it too.
Yeah, so there's like 10 unique board members that have seen.
So, yeah, so there's 10 people have already seen it.
I would say we can tell them it's been recorded, right? Because it's recorded.
And it's, that situation will come up in the retreat that's coming up.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Save us a little time.
Okay, but the 9th? Yeah, 9 o'clock?
The retreat's only an hour.
I have a feeling
Yeah.
it might go
Me too.
fast.
You told me it was gonna be an hour.
You told me it was gonna be an
I have
hour.
a feeling.
Which is good. I mean, if we have good conversation, I mean, that's.
We don't need
9
all the
o'clock,
fluff.
September 9th to 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock until the week before, and it'll be 10.
I don't think. Okay, I'll declare the meeting adjourned and no further. Have a good day.
Mr. Taylor, you don't know, no one anything, all of us voted no on something.